Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Wilke.
And I'm David Oro, and you're listening to The Embargoed, the greatest PR podcast of all time.
Someone's going to argue about that with us right now. But damn straight, there's always something to talk about and a point to make.
And we're going to do it when we want, which is usually every other week, though it's been a little bit longer this time.
But whether it's tech, business, sports, music, or your mama, we're going to cover it.
And all of it comes from the point of view of public relations, reputation, and communications.
It's all about punching stodgy PR in the face.
In the face. Punching stodgy PR.
Punching stodgy PR in the face.
So that's right. So sit back, relax, and let's get it on. Today is Thursday, April 13th. No, it's not even April. No, it's May 4th. Somebody change the line on the script, will you? Jeez, Louise.
We are off
to go back to taping this.
I am dying.
But anyways, that's the embargoed for you, right?
We're professional.
We're professional.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Well, good to see you again. It has been a while. I feel like we went through a whole season. I think the last time we spoke has been a bit, but somehow it's still raining in California.
Oh, man.
It's May and it's still raining, but hey, it's been that time of year. So
I just got back from England. We took some vacation in the UK, and I made I'm not a rookie traveler. I made a rookie travel mistake. We kind of drove all around England, and so we rented a car, drove around, and we returned to London just to visit some friends and stuff. And we had a hotel in Trafalgar Square, and we didn't check what was going on in London that day. And as we're driving closer and closer to the center of town, I'm seeing people with like the silver blankets on, and our hotel's like right where the finish line of the London Marathon is. And I'm driving like what I like to say. I was driving Ginger Rogers style, backwards and in heels, because I'm driving on the other side of the road, manual transmission, and closer I get, there's like thousands of people. And finally we got close to the hotel. There's no way I was going to be able to park. So I just told Audra, I'm like, fend for yourself, get out. And she got out, walked to the hotel, and it's nice to be back. That's the
welcome back. Welcome back. So listen, you invited our guests this week to show up to the show. Why don't you? I'll let you do the intros from here.
I am super excited about this. We have Gini Dietrich on today. She's the CEO of Oro and Dietrich and founder and author of Spin Sucks. And Gini, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, I've already had a blast, and I've been trying not to laugh because you hadn't introduced me yet. But
I know.
The intro is great. The London story is great. Like, this is I could just listen to the two of you. Let's just do that.
Well, we're either going to get better or worse from here. But I've become, in a very short space of time, a very huge fan of PESO. We first learned about it. We had Michelle Garrett on a few months ago.
Yep.
And she was talking about PESO, and David and I were like, what the hell is this? We have no idea what this is. And the longer...
Hold on, Paul. I actually knew what it was. I just couldn't remember.
Let's be fair. We knew what it was. We didn't know what it was called.
Okay, fair.
But you did such a great job of putting it all in perspective. And I want to give some airtime to you talking about it, what it is, and for those of our viewers who don't know what it is, or listeners, what it is, what it means, what it's all about. But you're the creator of this model, and you're the mastermind of it, and you're also the mastermind of the certification program that you're doing in conjunction with the SI Newhouse School of Communications at Syracuse University, which I went, loved it. Couldn't,
awesome.
Very, very thrilled with the affiliation. So let's dive into that first. So let's talk today all things PESO. And for those of you who don't know what it is or what it all means, Gini, tell us all about it.
And
without giving away the certification course.
Let's start though by telling us her little background of how she got to this point.
Yes, please.
On that whole thing. So introduce yourself there, Gini.
Sure. So Dave, you and I have a similar background. I grew up in the big PR firm world, and, I was very motivated and hungry, and had lots of clients who at my age, I shouldn't, at big budgets and big clients that I shouldn't have been running. But Fleischman was pretty much like, here's an account, go run it. And I suddenly had a, $4 million client, which I had no business doing. None, but they did it. And so one of the things that we heard over and over and over again was, all the work you guys are doing is great, but it's not measurable. And I remember very distinctly being in a meeting. We were in the conference room at, our big boardroom conference room. Everybody had on their suits and I had on heels, and we brought the client in, and that we went through the whole dog and pony show about everything that we had done that year. And Ocean Spray is a client. And that year, we had done so many great things. They had launched a 100% juice product. And so we did a traveling art show, because if you've ever seen cranberries harvested, what they do is they flood the field with water, and all of the cranberries will rise to the top. So you see these lakes of what looks like lakes of red, and it's absolutely stunning. And they're in places like British Columbia. So you have the backdrop of the mountains behind it, and Massachusetts, of course. And so, stunning stuff. So we hired some photographers and we sent them out to take photos of the harvest. And then we created the art of the traveling harvest. And we did donations to America's Second Harvest, and we did a traveling art show, and we had stationery and the whole kit and caboodle. And the whole world covered it. GMA, the Today Show, everybody, Epicurious, Food Network, everyone covered it. So from a PR perspective, it was like the thing. And we went into the boardroom and we were showing all of these results. And I will never forget, it still makes my stomach upset. The CMO sat back in her chair and she was like, "This is great. You guys did awesome. Our sales are down. We're losing growers, and our co-op sucks." And it was like, oh, you've got to be kidding.
Gini, listen, I have done fantastic PR for many failed businesses.
Right? That's right. I'm using that. That's good. That's really
so.
Good.
Listen, I had a similar story, and I'm glad you and I had the shared background. I didn't know that you and I worked at Fleischman Hillard until I started looking you up together. And so we were there in the 90s. And so I was surprised, and I was like, you know what? Did she really work there? And so I pulled out the 1998 draft directory from Fleischman Hillard.
I can't believe you have that. Oh my gosh.
So this is the directory, and I didn't know your maiden name.
I'm going to be so embarrassed.
But I think it starts with an A.
Oh no.
And I think that's you right there.
Yes, it is. Look at that haircut. Oh my god.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah. So there you go.
I can't believe you have that.
I have this because when I went to Asia with Fleischman Hillard, I just kind of had it with me, and it was shipped with my stuff. And when I came back after 4 years in Asia, I was freaking out about the work that I had done in Asia, and nobody would know it. And so I kept a portfolio of the work that I'd done.
Sure.
Reading books, press clippings, and I was going to go to an interview and just drop this thing of press clippings to anybody in America where I was looking for a job. And it just stayed in my closet, and I just thought about it right beforehand. So
that's amazing.
We'll make sure that, there you are. And that was you, right?
That was, yeah. How embarrassing.
I love it.
There we go.
Glad I didn't know that was coming out beforehand.
Surprise. Let's get back to it. I think I left it at great PR for failed companies or
great PR for failed companies. I mean, certainly Ocean Spray is not a failed company, but that year it was a really rough year. And I remember thinking there has to be a better way. Like, we have to figure out a way to measure our efforts, right? So I then went on and I helped to build a PR department for an ad agency, and I learned a lot about sort of integrated comms and working with advertising and marketing and sales through that experience. And then I went out on my own, and I kept thinking, like, how do we do this? How do we do this? And certainly we had the advent of social media, and we had, Google Analytics and all this stuff that suddenly at our doorstep, we were gifted this opportunity to actually start to look at ways to measure the things that we do. And as we were doing that, we were looking at an integrated model because that was my background, for the years before I started my business. And that's when Twitter was becoming a household name and Facebook was available for businesses, and LinkedIn became a thing, and then WordPress became all this stuff happened at the same time. And so we were working with clients to say, okay, not only do we think we can measure the work that we're doing, but we can do it in an integrated way. So I wrote Spin Sucks the book, and I talked about this. I talked about the whole process in the book, and my publisher said, we have to have a name for this. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, this is a process. Like this that you're describing here is a process. So she's actually the one to thank for how it came to fruition, because I didn't see it. And so we went back and forth, and we tried OSP, and we tried OSEP, and we tried all of these different acronyms to name it. And she finally said, what about PESO? And I was like, well, can we use that since it's a currency? And because they're the publishing arm, they went through the whole process and said, yes, you can. So we named it the PESO model. And then she said, we need an image. And so I hired somebody off of Upwork to create an image for it. And we published the book. And I had no idea, literally no idea it was going to do what it has done. Had I had the forethought and foresight to understand that, I would have had it copyrighted and trademarked before the book came out instead of after. But yeah, that's how it came about.
So what is the acronyms mean?
So it's PESO model is paid, earned, shared, and owned media. So you're really looking at things like, people will say all the time, well, I do PR, I don't start with paid. And really and truly, I agree with that. The only reason the acronym starts with that is because it's easier to remember. PESO is easier to remember, right? But if I were starting a brand new campaign, I would always start with owned. And then I would either go shared or earned, and then paid. So that's how we kind of look at it.
Listen, if you're a public relations professional today, the people pay you for that earned media.
Yes.
Get me in the New York Times. Get me on GMA. Get me in the Wall Street Journal. Get me on in my local TV station.
Yep.
That's gold. That will never go away. If you can do that, somebody's going to pay you some money. Somebody's going to steal some money to pay you some money to get it. Right? But if you're also that PR professional person and you're a media relations person who loves that earned media, you cannot ignore those other three things. I think
you cannot.
For any modern communications professional, paid has to be part of it. Give me $100 and I'll go place this. Give me
that's right. Yep.
I'll go place this.
Yep.
How do you work with clients? I would imagine that PESO, it's so simplified and it makes so much sense, and that's probably why it's taken off for you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you talk to clients about it? Do you and how do these conversations go?
So they usually go one of two ways. I actually drew a line in the sand, and it was really, really hard to do. It was very hard to do as a business owner. I said, we're not going to do anything that's not a fully integrated PESO model program anymore. So we get so many referrals for media relations. We need a really good PR firm that can do media relations, and I turn them down every time. And sometimes, I'll always make referrals, and I'll say, but I think you should talk to so-and-so or so-and-so, because they do great work in that area. And sometimes the prospect will say, well, you have such a good reputation. What do you do? And then I take that time to educate them on the PESO model. Sometimes they say, actually, I want that. And sometimes they're like, yeah, we really just need somebody that's boots on the ground that can get media. And I'm like, great, here's some recommendations. Mm-hmm. So it usually goes one of those two ways. But I always take the opportunity, if they're open to it, to educating them on the process and how we work in it.
I think one of the things that fascinated me, and I went through the certification course, and I as I went through, I realized there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that falls into the PESO model.
Sure. Yep.
I'll give you examples. See if I followed the training correctly. So, let's say that we're doing this right now. We're taping this discussion. In a way, the end product could fall into all four categories. So if we edited this and we paid to put it on a PR trade outlet, that covers the paid spot. Earned, we wrote a press release, or we have a story based on our conversation. We got that placed in TechCrunch. That's the
Love it. Yep.
We share the hell out of it on social media, LinkedIn, whatever. And then on the own component, we could put this on our website, or we can put this on LinkedIn, or we can put this on our YouTube channel, which we do, by the way. Go to YouTube to see the Embargoed every edition. So, that sort of everything in there falls into the PESO model.
That's right.
As when I started Upright 11 years ago, we were, earned snobs. I'll totally confess. Oh, we don't do paid. We don't do any of that. We don't do social media, none of that. But as we've gone along and as we've learned more, it's like we're already doing this stuff.
Right. The University of Southern California just released their global communications report, and it talked about reputation. So it's a really good. I love the report every year, but this one's especially good because it talks about the things that have changed so significantly. And one of the questions they ask specifically of investors, consumers, and employees is, what do you find most credible when you're looking at a company's reputation? And earned media actually fell much lower than they expected. Reviews. Reviews is number one. Reviews. Amazing. So when you think about your job evolving, those are the kinds of things you start to think about, right? Like, I mean, we've all seen the media landscape change pretty drastically. I'm sure, Paul, the reason that you are no longer an earned media snob is out of out of necessity, but that's where things are going. So when you think about, if you're doing earned media, how do you bring these other things in? You have to start thinking about, how do you bring the other three media types in and do some of the other kinds of things that provide the credibility that earned media used to do.
Exactly. And to your point, it's not always the earned thing that moves the needle.
That's
right.
And
you combine that with the PR person's burden of, it's harder to get earned coverage now than it was 5 years, 4 years ago.
Yep.
I love the fact that the pieces are all there. It's just thinking about, maybe it's thinking differently, or thinking about, thinking more about where to put this. Now, the one question I always have in the back of my head, especially as, falling into that where traditional, most of our work is traditionally media relations. How do you cross that threshold with your client especially on the earned side? How do you get them to part with the marketing dollars that they've allocated elsewhere or haven't thought about in the context of PR?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, and the answer, unfortunately, is it depends. But some of the things that we've had really good success with is, I mean, Dave, you kind of made light of this earlier, but said, give me $100 and I'll go place this. But that's true. Like, it's, if you can get $100 or $50 or $1,500 or $2,000 to be on the board of counsel, that's not a huge, for most companies, that's not a huge amount of money for you to go show them how it works. So start with those kinds of things. Start with, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this episode has had the challenge of pitching something and them saying, this is great, but we charge $1,500 for something like that. And you're just like, oh. So use that as an opportunity to get those marketing dollars. And it's not a huge amount, right? You're not asking for $100,000. You're asking for $100 or $1,000 to test this out. So I would say that's number one. And number two is, especially if you're doing, this is a little harder with consumer, but if you're doing any trade media, they all take contributed content, all of them. And so make that leap from we're pitching stories and interviews and features to we're pitching those things and we're pitching contributed content. Oh, and by the way, they've accepted this article idea. Someone has to write it. And so now you're doing own media as well. You're starting to do the writing and the content marketing too.
I think before, agencies spent hours either doing consulting or ramming a bunch of people, account executives and some SVP in a room. And that's like billable hours are like, dude, you're getting thousands of dollars. So that Ocean Spray meeting was super expensive, Gini.
Super expensive. Sure it was.
Yeah. So are you now, though, it seems like a lot of it is on content creation. Like, I'm doing a lot more content creation before. Yep. Content creation used to be coming up with an idea or a theme or a campaign, building some media lists, writing a press release, and then going out and doing the legwork of, making phone calls and getting people together. But now I'm finding that, you know what? Writers. We need a lot of writers now.
Yes. So many writers. Yes. Yes.
That's really what we're doing. What kind of balance do you see in the PESO model, right? Is there, I'm imagining it's different for every company, but is there one that takes precedence over another?
Yeah, owned media does for sure. So you're right. We have lots of writers. We have 2 podcast producers, a videographer, and 2 graphic designers on our team. So that's the majority. And then we have 1 earned media person as well.
And so you're also working with clients beyond just sort of a written blog, but you're producing content for them on blogs and podcasts.
Yep.
Well, since we talked about writing, I feel like this might be the place to start talking about AI.
That's what I was just going to say.
Shall we awkwardly segue into that?
Yes.
It's one of those things, it's taken over the news cycle in every trade media, mainstream news media, work conversations, and in PR, it's no exception. I'm going to just say, hey, AI, discuss.
I have a client who is, he won't want me to tell you his exact age, but he's in his 80s. And I've been working with him for years, and he'll only work with me, and he still hand delivers me a check every month, and I love him. But he has created, with some help, he has created sort of a thought leader for himself in his industry at this age. And it's been really fun to watch. But one of the things he keeps getting asked to do is write content. And he's a keyboard pecker, right? He can't write content. And so in the beginning, I said to him, well, why don't you just dictate it to your computer? And I showed him how to do that, and you can do that. And then he sends it over to me, and I make it better, clean it up, edit it. But then I said, well, why don't you try ChatGPT? I mean, his world entirely changed, completely changed, because now he puts the prompts in as he pecks at his keyboard, and he gets something that is beautifully written. It's, we always make sure that it's factually correct, but he's able to do it in his voice because there's enough content online now, because we've been working together for almost 10 years. There's enough content in his voice online that we've been able to feed that in there. So it makes it sound like he has actually written it, and his whole world has changed. So this is where we are. This is what it is.
What I find remarkable is this shift that has happened in this first half of this year. So ChatGPT came late last year. People were like, "Oh, that's cool," and then from January onward,
you're right.
All the media stories are there. I'm trying to think of a technology precedence where it was adopted and so excited. So I think during the .com days, everyone was like, get a .com and do that, and it was kind of exciting, but it built up over a couple of years. We had been hearing about AI for a long time. It wasn't there. But just think, before all of this, it was crypto, right?
Yep.
Social media. It was the FANG stocks. It was all of that. There was a lot of other things that we can pay attention to. But what I'm saying now is that this has come on so quickly and so fast.
You're right.
And not only that, has been super helpful and useful to a lot of people. I punched it in, and it's not perfect.
No, it's not.
But damn it, a good intern could have wrote that for me.
That's right.
And I've got a framework that I could use now to make it a really polished thing. And by the way, that's 3 hours of my time that I just saved.
That's right.
I think the closest analogy, but again, it's time compressed. The closest analogy is, what can the personal computer do for you in the late 70s, early 80s? And that's not even apples to apples, because the AI stuff happened so fast. And I remember we were talking amongst ourselves here late last year. It's like, we should put a line in the sand and say, hey, all our content's human curated. And I was like, let me play with it first. And after I played with it, I'm like, not so fast. Not so fast.
Right.
And the analogy I now use is, if you're a tradesman, or let's say you do pool maintenance, you've got the truck with all the tools in the back. you couldn't drop that off at a person's house who has a pool and say, "Hey, here you
Correct.
go, have fun
That's
with
right.
it," because you tumble with it. You need that professional. And like David, like you said, first draft for a press release, better or as good as something the intern can give you. It gives you something to play with.
Yep.
I wouldn't just blindly say, "Hey, type this proposal up," and just send it without reading it. It would take a lot of work to get it right, but it ain't bad for a first cut.
It's really not bad for a first draft at all.
So PR industry, embrace it, take it on.
I mean, yeah, I think we should embrace it. I think to your point, it saves so much time, and it also prevents writer's block. So there have been lots of days where I'm like, oh, I have to get this started. And I have no idea where to start. And so I put some prompts into it, and all of a sudden I have something on paper that I can that has a framework that I can go, oh, okay, this is how I should outline it. And then I can use what I use, and I curate the rest of it myself. But it gives you a great starting spot, and you don't have writer's block anymore.
No, it's editing word salad is better than writing from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. I came at it with a little bit of trepidation. It almost felt like cheating, honestly.
Yeah.
And I was
plagiarizing.
And I'm like, I could do this. And then I started talking to clients, and they're like, well, we got to do this content. And I'm like, let's see what Chat GPT can come up with. Oh, we like this. Let's clean this up, put it up on a blog or something like that. And I'm like,
I mean, my running joke is, I haven't written anything original since the year that handbook came out that you held up. So, I mean, this refreshes it a little bit.
Let's admit it, Paul. Even without ChatGPT, our research allowed us to go scour things, and we were lifting up stuff. There's very few originals out there, right? And we're just looking at things, trying to piece it together to make it our own thoughts.
Yeah, right.
But you know what?
Exactly right.
10,000 microprocessors are a lot better than my brain.
I mean, you think about the lowly press release. We
press
start
release
with the opening sentence, which is the same every time.
Every time.
So-and-so leading blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And then the boilerplate's the same. And then we just kind of write the middle.
Yep.
It's no different.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
So are you using it more is it a regular thing for either one of you to use it?
Oh yeah, I use it every day.
I'm not there yet. I'm close. I use it in times of like I need inspiration, or I'm having writer's block, or I actually the thing and it's very similar to the example you used with your friend who used it for the first time. I had to write a letter. I had to write an email to a client about a proposal that and the structure was I wasn't even familiar with. They asked a question like, "Hey, what if we did this?" I'm like, I have no idea how to write this. And I just kind of put it in, hey, write an email to a client who's rejecting your proposal but wants to do this, this, and this, and this. I'm like, okay. And it came up with a good working version.
Really? Yeah. I haven't even tried that.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
The more specific you give it,
it
goes pretty deep.
It does.
I think Gini, you shared a link to HubSpot put together
with the prompts.
ChatGPT prompts, and there's like a list of, I don't know, like all kinds of prompts for a marketer or a brand person or a writer or a content creator, etc. Because the prompt is so key, right?
That's right.
And the new hot job title isn't social media manager, it's prompt engineer. How can you get the result you want from AI by asking the right prompt? And the more detail you give it, now I'll tell people, like, the more detail and context you can give it, the better answer will be. So if it's like, write me a press release about cranberries floating in the water, it's not necessarily going to give you anything. But
right.
Write me a press release about Ocean Spray, the brand, and their campaign that of showcasing how cranberries are harvested in the 90s, and the health benefits of it. It'll go find those things for you, and it becomes very powerful. The prompt part is key.
You're absolutely right. And I think, that certainly is where humans come into play, right? And you have to be smart about it too. So that takes some experience. It's not like you can just, I can put my 10-year-old on it and say, okay, write me an article. Like, it's not going to work yet, but we might get there.
I'll confess my first test of the AI was I punched in it convinced me that La Brea and Gilligan's Island are the same show. It did a damn good job.
Did it really?
I'm glad you're using it for value-added things, Paul.
You know, this is the hard-hitting stuff we cover every day.
Yeah. I would say this to the comms professionals out there: use the tools that are provided to you. Right? This is a new tool. It's an exciting new tool. It's also a very scary new tool. Somebody's going to get hurt doing this. And it may be like in a comms thing, but it may be a very societal thing where you have AI-generated content creating propaganda that moves societies or starts wars or does things like that. But in this line of profession, there's nobody that's not going to use a tool to give them a competitive advantage. And I think this is something that is exciting, a little bit freaky, but also very valuable, right? Because now you can, like, instead of spending hours on writing, which is a value in of itself, you can spend it finding new opportunities, talking to a client, or going for a walk, right? You know, things like that.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. I absolutely agree that it's a tool that we should use. And it's like anything else. I mean, when social media was starting up, I remember I actually made a lot of money speaking to CEO audiences who kept saying social media is for the kids. And I kept saying, it's not for the kids. It's going to affect your business. And here's what it's going to look like. And I mean, I made a ton of money just doing that because they were so reticent for it. And I think that's where we are here with this is it's another tool in your toolbox. It makes you more efficient. So test it out and see what happens.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to PESO and certification and learning more. So this is the shameless plug component of the embargo. Okay. Where's a good place for people to either dive in or go to learn more information or sign up for the certification course?
Yeah, and I want to know, Gini, is what's the value of getting that certification? How long is it going to take me to do it?
Oh, great question. Yeah. It is set up for you to take it in 8 weeks. Nobody finishes in 8 weeks. Maybe Paul, you did, but you're very rare. Usually what we find is people will watch the videos through and then they'll watch them again and do the work. And we find that they're doing the work for a campaign that they're working on or for a client or for their job. And it usually takes them a little bit longer because they have a full-time job and this is what they're doing on the side. So it is built that you could do it in 8 weeks, but most people we find is like between 4 and 6 months usually. It's all on demand. It's all self-service. We've been updating. We updated at the end of last year and we're going to update again this summer. So we're trying to keep things live and fresh. It doesn't have AI in it yet, but it will this summer. And spinsucks.com has everything. It has, we have frequently asked questions. We have all sorts of content. You can find everything, pretty much everything you need. And if you have questions, you can just ping me.
If I take this course, there's nothing I won't know. You're not holding anything back about being a PESO certified person.
I'm holding nothing back. And you get a certificate.
There's not another letter. PESO.
It's like when people ask me for a recipe for something, I always leave something out.
Yeah.
It's not that.
But the other great thing is you're not left hanging. You actually have a Slack channel where everyone can ask questions and talk and share information, and that's worth the price of admission too. Yeah,
we love that community. It's a fun community. But yeah, and then you also get the certification from us and from Newhouse at Syracuse, which is a big deal. It's a big deal.
Gini, thank you for being on the show with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm glad I could share memories from Fleischman Miller with you.
My team's gonna die when I tell them.
That'll be the most well-produced part of our show. Thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you so much. We've so enjoyed having you, and you're welcome back anytime.
Okay, I'll be back next week.
All right, we'll see you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.